Part two of Mostly Peaceful Podcast. The return episode continues, where we get into the actual races. Now that we've set the stage, covered what the midterms are, and what the Republicans need to get to win. Uh, before
Not that
we,
that will necessarily accomplish anything. Hard to say.
we can hope, always have hope. Even if the sword's coming down on your neck, you still gotta hold on to hope. I don't care how dire it looks. I don't care how black-pilled the stuff we say sounds. Don't give up. Giving
Sounded
up
a
is
bit
the
single
worst.
rumpus there.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But it's not. It's still true. Giving up is the worst thing you can possibly do in any situation. So, no matter what I say, and no matter how dodgy some of the people we maybe say you need to go vote for are, get your butt out there and push the button. So, before we jump into the races, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. You asked in the notes here how the ballot process is conducted. Uh, this is not consistent between states.
Right.
The way
So,
this
but they will be laid down constitutionally for each state, though, right?
yes, and they follow usually a general pattern. For most states, it will go early votes will be cast, sorted, and held till election day. Most states technically don't allow early tallying, but ever since early voting's been a thing, the judiciary has turned a blind eye to any tally leaks that leak out. So this should have been a red flag, but it didn't impact people at the time, or we didn't know it impacted us at the time. So we haven't really paid much attention to it. I think some states do allow early tallying. It's a state by state thing. So this continues until election day, and you can usually early vote a whole week before election day. I know the Opossum and his family went out to early vote. I'm not doing that. I'm going on election day because, and we'll encourage all others who happen to stumble across this before elections happen, or for any future elections to do the same, because it's just one of the safeguards we can do to try and actively counter the 2020 going on. If you show up to vote on day, they can't pre-order pallets of boxes because they don't know your vote's coming yet. They don't know they need
I
to
I have
offset it.
pre-voted in the past because sometimes it's on a day that I can't make it to a ballot place or whatever. But normally I vote on election day if I can.
Yep. And I actually signed up to be a poll watcher this election, but I did not get called. Apparently, they filled all the positions, and enough people applied.
There's a lot of enthusiasm, believe it or not, for the role these days.
Yeah. So apparently, there were a whole bunch of us in Gwinnett County that signed up because we were one of the ones that had a video leak. So, well, I think that would have been a lot of fun to show it with like-minded people that were angry enough to sign up to be poll watchers and go shut all over the Democrat poll watchers. That doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Well,
I'm
there's
not.
been a big debacle tried to be stirred up by the media. It didn't seem very successful, but the media tried to stir up a debacle about um, groups of Republicans sort of like conveniently hanging out while open carrying firearms near ballot boxes,
Yeah.
just sort of like chilling.
The funny part is in some of these instances, this is what I was referring to before. This was legislation passed by the state earlier in the year or the year before that you could totally do this as a way to try and offset the 2020.
I honestly expected the federal government to rush through a federal ban on such things, like to try and federally force down like a no-gun zone within like a kilometer of a ballot box, and then just count on that to not make it through the courts in time.
Yeah, they could try.
Because that really seems to be the Biden administration's primary game, is to just pass ridiculously unconstitutional executive orders and then count on the courts to be too slow to resolve them in time.
Yeah, and as long as it's operated by a federal agency, they'll go along with it. For most of these drop boxes, though, there is one uh, small issue. While the drop box itself is government property, the land it's on ain't. It is that land is state property, and they would have to first make any area the drop box is on seized by the federal government, and the states can just move them to a very inconvenient location if that happens. Because The states aren't going to like losing land. The federal government, they never do. They always fight the federal government. They're very, very consistent on that one thing. So that's one
I
potential.
don't think a I don't think a blue state would fight it if it was in a red
Oh no,
district, though.
no, yeah, they wouldn't if it was in a red district. If enough of their drop boxes were in red districts and it was scaring them enough, yeah, they'd totally just bend over for it. But that's just Democrats being Democrats. That has almost nothing to do with the level of state politics because the Democrats are uniminded monster, and that they get snapped into line real quick. So after November 8th this year, November 8th this year is the first. Is it the second or first? I think it's the second Tuesday. Yes, the second Tuesday in November. So this is the earliest it can be. Uh, all votes are finished being cast. All early votes are finished being organized. Tallying begins. Usually around noonish. Noonish to 5 o'clock is when they start tallying, and they'll start reporting tallies around anytime in the day, really, but usually after 5.
Now, in
And
every country on Earth that has elections, apart from the United States, the result is typically revealed the same day that the voting takes place.
yeah, in most states and counties, the county and state actually require you to finish by midnight. Several of the states that kept counting votes afterwards blatantly broke state law in the 2020 election. This was part of the lawsuits that got dismissed for no standing. You're supposed to finish by midnight because it's supposed to be election day. Now, it's already technically election week because of the early voting. But we have election day is supposed to at least end then as a hard end date. You don't get to extend like you're filing your taxes forever. But
I don't think we mentioned this properly back when we were talking about the dismissal of the cases. But when we say the case was dismissed as having no standing, a lot of people misinterpret that to mean as the case has no merit. But
yeah,
what that actually means is that the merit of the case has not been examined because it cannot be established that the complainant is truly the injured party.
yeah. Whoever has brought the lawsuit, the court cannot determine or has determined that they are not sufficiently injured uh, to bring a case to the court.
And the reason why this is such an easy dodge for them is because it's very hard to nail down precisely an individual who has standing in a situation where the issue at hand is the veracity of an election result, where one could say that the entirety of the state could be injured by it, or you could say that an individual might be injured by it, or it's very hard to because it's not an injury against a particular person, but it's sort of diffused out amongst a lot of people. It's very easy for them to dodge and come up with some excuse for why any given particular person isn't the injured party.
Yeah,
It
and
doesn't. I don't think it really has any substantive weight, but that's not the point. The point is they can do a legal dodge.
yeah, it's in they threw it out at the Supreme. Well, they didn't throw it out at the Supreme Court level. John Roberts refused to hear it when 14 states had signed a letter that they wanted the election examined. They wanted to present a case to the Supreme Court about it, and
Was there ever any kind of confirmation on the rumors that came out about him blowing his stack?
uh, as confirmed as we could reasonably be without him outright admitting it. We didn't have or having video proof or an audio recording. Plenty of the staffers could or do report that he screamed at the top of his lungs in the meeting room. We literally just had riots in the streets and stuff like that about when it came to hearing the election vote.
And this is what I mean by judicial cowardice.
Yeah, the man is a coward.
Yeah, he's one of those people who I was describing when I was talking about enlightened centrists. Like he thinks that there is something fundamentally moral about not standing on principle and trying to play both sides.
Yep. So that's why they lost at the state level. On the individual level, we tried to present cases. On the institutional level, we tried to present cases. Plenty of advocacy groups, plenty of audit groups petitioned to take a look at it. Plenty of fairly respected lawyers tried to rally support and get courts to take a look at it. All of it dismissed with no standing. These people were not injured enough for the court to allow them to present evidence, so they never got to make their
Because the
case.
unfortunately, the injury is distributed one piece at a time amongst all of the people in the electorate.
Yeah.
So,
Everybody's
or at least that's
wallet.
the way they chose to frame it.
Maybe if we stitched our wallets together, pointing at the gas pump, that would have standing.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand.
Right. So, votes are supposed to be tallied by midnight in most state constitutions. Although, as I mentioned before, 2020 has thrown that straight out the window. Once all votes are counted, the election results are posted. And we know who won by usually 2 o'clock in the morning, at the latest, because time zones. And California and Oregon are pretty safe D's for the most part. So you could just assume they're gonna go that way. This is where it should end. This is where it has ended most of my life. But as things stand, some fat activist named Shaniqua will send everybody home because a toilet overflowed, call it a pipe burst, and then pull a box of ballots out from underneath the table and scan them multiple times inside the voting machine.
Wait, was it actually someone called Shaniqua?
No, it started with
Okay.
it started with R.
In Atlanta, I can't be sure.
No, but when I say that, I mean fat urban woman type. Already getting banned for that one, but I dodged the bigger bullet. Anyway, and she will just keep doing this until she gets the result she wants. See Fulton County. So, that's how the election process is supposed to go. Unfortunately, we still use Dominion voting machines in the US. A whole lot
Which
of
I'm incredulous about. Like, it would be so easy just to get rid of that particular allegation by switching to another system,
or just,
and then they could say, "Oh, well, we changed system away from Dominion because all you conspiracy theorists don't like Dominion." But look, we got the same result with another system.
but no, they know they got this so in the bag that they just don't care. Like, just go back to paper ballots that you have to manually hole punch and sign.
We use them in New Zealand.
Like,
I don't think we hole punch it. We don't have the hole punch system. Although the hole punch system is actually pretty ingenious in a lot of ways. But we write on a piece of paper and it gets counted. I'm not saying there's no ballot fraud in New Zealand, but
you can't
we
print those as
do.
easy.
Yeah, we do have it, and I'm not really sure what the problem with that is. To be totally honest,
Yeah,
it's used in the UK as well. Although the UK did have a scandal with a ballot printing operator, corrupt politician was running out of a warehouse where they were just printing off ballots as fast as they could to win an election.
yeah,
It was a local one, though, I think.
yeah. And yeah, I if it was up to me, we'd go back to pottery shards. I'm all for this idea. Just like this is, I stole this straight from Sargon. Sounds like a great idea.
Good old pottery shards, eh?
Yep, because we making sure that no extra ballots are put in that box is my number one political issue. It trumps everything else by not a small margin.
But I can imagine a future in which they propose successfully the idea to resolve this of tying it to your social credit score.
I know, because we can't do things the simple way that we know works. So let's talk about the individual races. So, first up on the docket for Senate races, I have Arizona with Mark Kelly and Blake Masters.
I see the most noise about Arizona of any state when it comes to election, contentious elections. It's always Arizona.
Because Arizona has Maricopa County and the rest of Arizona. The rest of Arizona is hard red and will usually, if they can be riled to turn out, will win the state. Maricopa County is deep blue. It's where Las Vegas is. Oh, not Las Vegas. I can't remember the name of the big city there. Probably haven't. Phoenix is probably in there. I think
That's
there's
the
another
only
one.
city I know in Arizona. So
Las Vegas is in Nevada. Don't listen to me. But yeah, there's a big city in there, and it's the biggest urban center, and it's where all the illegal immigrants come into the country from. They wind up in Maricopa, so it has a very high density of illegal immigrant workers. So this means, of course, illegal immigrant voters voting illegally. Whether the country wants to admit that happens or not, it happens a lot, and is the reason the border is currently open right now, and the local counties in Arizona are having to fill it with shipping containers. So, the Senate race here is Mark Kelly versus Blake Master. I don't actually know very much about Mark Kelly. Uh, Mark Kelly seems like a typical Democrat, and for most Democrats that I don't know much about, it's just safe to assume they're a lefty progressive or a functional lefty progressive. Because they're just going to go in lockstep with the party, and the party is always going to drift further and further left as time goes on because they always have to progress towards something, part of their identity, and they're a hive mind that is very dedicated in that task. You can always count on the Democrats to act consistently, if nothing else, consistently irrationally, but consistently irrational.
Which is part of why I don't even know what to think about Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, she clearly is out of step, even if she
I think she's definitely a Democrat and a progressive, but I don't think she's the right kind of Democrat and progressive for them to tolerate.
it's like the hive mind effect didn't take.
Yeah, it's like she shares their beliefs, but she won't march to the beat of their drum.
Yeah. So yeah, Blake Masters is an straight American first candidate, from what I can tell. He is a big he's an underdog in this race. The media is projecting him, and all the polls are projecting him very low. But I don't believe polls. I don't reference any polls in my notes for a reason, other than my vague memory of them. But the media,
When the polls say that it's R favored, then you know that seat's probably snowed for R.
yeah, they've given up on that one if they say it's a safe R.
Because what
But
they want is to influence voters. Like I don't even understand why there's an argument about this. Like I don't understand why there's a discussion. There can't seriously be anybody who believes that poll results aren't purely to influence voters.
little Benny boy does. He thinks they're legit. Oh, Benny boy.
How can he be so dumb? Like really, he's one of those people who has all of this intellectual firepower and just no common sense about how to use it.
Yeah, you know the answer. I know the answer.
Oh no, we're not going to talk about that.
Kanye knows the answer, and we can't say the answer.
You just gave the game away, man.
So that's that. Blake Master seems like a solid pick. I think he is going to do incredibly well, and if the Democrats don't 2020, they're going to get a surprise kick in the nuts.
I think that Red Arizona will riot if they see more malfeasance this time around. Like I think that they have been looking for a chance to start wringing necks there.
Yeah, Arizona is they're a very animated people in the rural areas of Arizona. That's hot desert that you got to do ranching in. Them boys, ready to go at a minute's notice, and
you need to be energetic just to live there. Like this is not a hospitable location. I don't understand why anybody lives in Arizona.
Like they live in an actual blistering desert.
But you think that it's bad that Christchurch is a mess? You think it's living in a country that's wrecked with earthquakes all the time and flooding all the time is bad? Like, it seems like heaven compared to the idea of living in Arizona State, simply because it's so damn hot there.
It's I don't mind heat. I don't mind dryness. I could not stand the long days there, and the dust and just the ecology there. It's
That's the closest thing that you guys have to inland Australia is Arizona State.
yeah, yeah. So that's I think Blake's gonna do very surprisingly well. And I think they are going to try in 2020 it. I don't know if they have the same ability to 2020 as hard in Arizona. Arizona got a lot of media attention last time. The Maricopa County audit proved that they cheated, and it was publicized to everybody, and everybody on the right knows it. Everybody on the hard right, anyway. The boomer cons don't, because all they watch is the lie box, which by lie box I mean the television. But
I mean, if I was a dim drone tasked with orchestrating these sorts of things, I would use a light touch or no touch at all in Arizona. I would just let the chips fall where they may and just consider it a write off because you just don't want more attention on that. Because really do think that Arizona is going to implode if they have a repeat performance.
yeah,
Like they're not going to tolerate it a second time round. They already feel jilted.
yeah, and they have another race I'll jump into next. But oh, we'll go ahead and do that now to continue setting up Arizona. Uh, Arizona also has Kerry Lake versus Katie Hobbs. Kerry Lake, they both start with K, so I'm going to get their names flipped by accident so many times. But Kerry Lake is the Republican. Katie Hobbs is the Democrat. Katie Hobbs is the incumbent, I think. And I don't think she's a fresh run. Yeah, she's an incumbent. And whatever she is, she's not popular. And Kerry Lake is a local celebrity who is the female coming of Trump.
Is she being framed that way, or is she actually like that? Like, is
Oh
she
no,
actually
she's
pro
actually
America first?
yeah, she's actually like that. She's probably the most America First candidate in any of these races.
So I guess the in our spheres, the talking head for Arizona would probably be Razor Fist, right?
Yeah,
What's his opinion on her?
he likes her. He's a little skeptical of the election, but
There's
he
nothing he's not skeptical about. So
yeah,
we can write
that's what
that
I was
one
about to
off.
say. He's always skeptical of everything, but the fist has been positive towards Carrie Lake in the little bit I've seen him talk about her. He hasn't actually weighed in on his YouTube channel very much about Carrie Lake, so I don't know his full opinions on her. I think she has it in the bag. Her opponent is hiding from her, refuses to debate, and it's the Democrats are even asking her at town halls, "Why aren't you debating Carrie Lake?" Um, and Carrie Lake is also a local newscaster that's been known and well loved by the community forever, according to everybody from Arizona that I've talked to. Like everybody knows who she is, or at least has some idea of who she is. So she already has name recognition and a positive name brand. So she's got a whole lot of wind at her back to take out Katie Hobbs.
Yeah, I from what I've seen of the sort of the on the ground temperature that overflows onto the internet, the people of Arizona seem very confident in her. Like they are, it feels like the sort of vibe feels like they are waiting for her to lose as proof that it was never real.
Yeah,
Like
I
they consider her victorious already almost, and that if she doesn't win, it's evidence in favor that the whole system is broken. At which point Arizona goes nuclear.
yeah that would be the straw that broke the camel's back because Katie Hobbs doesn't have a shot in hell. Not with the way she's been acting, not showing up to debates. Even the Democrats are turning on her. Like there is no scenario where she wins legitimately that I could see in the future with my crystal ball. So there's that one. That's Arizona. Next up is my home state. This is very hard for me to talk about.
Are
I
you ready? Are you ready for Governor Stacey Abrams?
I love my state. I'm a proud Georgian and have always loved my state. The good people out in the rural areas, the people I meet on job sites, the just general nice homely feel you get as soon as you get out of the densely populated areas. It is one of the best places in the world to live, and I was blessed to be born here.
And it's not as hot as Arizona.
It is not as hot as Arizona. It's still pretty
And it
hot.
has less flies than Florida.
Yeah. It is a truly wonderful place to live. We'll start with the Senate race because I don't want to talk about the land whale yet. This one's a bit easier. Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, current incumbent,
I
beat
hate
out.
him. I hate him with every fiber of my being. Every
I
time he opens his mouth, I want to strangle him.
I do too. He's a preacher that denied the divinity of Christ and is in general just a corrupt, evil man who has bought off so many people, it's laughable, and has run the most ridiculous attack ads against his opponent, Herschel Walker, the Republican. Herschel Walker is a local, like, hero, a sports hero, that is. Of all the normie penetrating candidates we could have picked, you can't do better than Herschel. Herschel is known by every college football fan in the entire state. He played for the Bulldogs and was a super sports hero. He's always been a conservative, as far as I know. And while he is a little middle of the road, he is America first. I think he's got the endorsement of Trump. Trump is good friends with Herschel Walker. Um, he's not as hard as Kerry Lake in like the way he presents himself, but I think he'll vote America first on everything and be a strong voice for the Conservative Party.
What do you do in his professional life?
He was a football player.
So because you only said college football, so I didn't know if that meant that he actually went pro.
I don't know what he did after college ball, but that was enough to carry him for the rest of his life. What his football days did there. I don't know if he went pro or not or did
Yeah.
anything, but he's known for playing for the Bulldogs here.
Yeah, varsity football is not as much of a thing in New Zealand. Like we don't have university teams to that sort of extent in New Zealand. It's purely regional.
Yeah, the normies eat it up, and the regional rivalries are you can start fights at bars by saying you're a Gators fan here.
Yeah, New Zealand operates entirely around a framework of sports is the most important thing in the country, but there's very little bad blood in New Zealand, probably because we're such a small country and people move around a lot. Like it is considered part of your duty when you move to a new area to change the team that you support for almost.
Uh, in the South, there's a cheat code for that. It's called Alabama sucks though, doesn't it?
So you can bond over ragging on Alabama.
Yeah, that's what everybody does in the South anyway. Is everybody has their own team, but they are all unified in their hatred of Alabama, and Alabama hates everybody else.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'm contractually obliged by living in Christchurch for 16 years to support the Crusaders, who I would support anyway because they've got the coolest name and because Taranaki's got a crappy team. They've got well, actually that's not really true. Taranaki's got a very spotty team. It seems to be legendarily good once in a great while, but yeah, it's considered part of moving in, sort of, is to adopt the local sports teams.
Yeah, some regions of the U.S. are like that. The South is not. The South is very regionally divided, but our rivalries all go in one direction. And usually there's a chief rival school somewhere that isn't Alabama as well. Like for us in Georgia, it's Florida. So the University of Florida and the Gators are always our one we see people getting arguments over. So yeah, that's Herschel Walker. Don't really care what he did afterwards. From what I've seen of him and the way he's talked on the campaign trail and the little bit before then when he just was palling around with Trump, seems like a good dude.
Yeah, especially for the American context, I don't really have any problem with the idea of sports heroes becoming politicians. Like, I know that a lot of intellectual people look down on that type of things. Oh, what do they know about policy? What do they know about economics? What do they know about this, that, and the other? But in America, it seems to me that, particularly at the sort of stage that you're at in the decay of your republic, having somebody who actually loves their country should come above everything else.
And there's no reason that you can't be smart and be a football player as long as you don't knock your
I'm
head
not
around too
saying that that's the
much.
case. I'm saying that the fact that they're a sports person will make certain people look down on them.
Oh yeah, but and Herschel's fairly quick on his feet. He's managed to parry most of Warnock with relatively little effort, just by calling him a liar, basically.
The thing is with Warnock is that he's so deep in the devil's juju that basically he doesn't. I don't feel like Warnock ever thinks. I don't think that he has a mind really. I think that he just says the things that he knows he's supposed to say, and
Yeah,
then just counts on the machine to support him.
yeah. Warnock is a very corrupt man. He is well known as soon as he got sent to the Senate. Uh,
If I was a
for
Georgian, I'd be deeply ashamed that he got sent to the Senate at all.
yeah, for his backroom deals, for his paying off of people, for his generally abhorrent views on things like abortion and just the rights of individuals in general.
Well, he's
He
just a bad person. Like along every measurable axis, he's a
yeah,
bad person. He's a morally bad person.
pick a topic, he's in the wrong on it. He is a horrible representation of Georgia.
I bet he
He
wants reparations too.
he does, and yeah, he's got to go. So I am pulling for Herschel. Herschel runs away with this if it's a clean election. Warnock can be the DSD of all time. Herschel's going to make people turn out to vote for him. We're just going to have a lot of Republican turnout just for Herschel, which is good because it means we may be able to cockblock Stacey Abrams. So,
But my Georgia voter suppression.
so,
Landwell told me it's really bad this year.
so I'm not going to say the B word. But we also have a gubernatorial race. Not every state has a gubernatorial race. I didn't mention this before when I was doing my covers, but 36 states do have races this year. Most governors serve 4 terms in most states, or 4 years, and are allowed 2 terms in most states, just like the president. When they come up for re-election, though, depends on a lot of factors because of time states came into the union and when they were allowed to elect their first governor, a whole mess of stuff, and people dying and being replaced, and special elections and all that mess. But this is the big gubernatorial year with 36 states up for re-election. So we have Brian Kemp, incumbent Republican, versus the runback with Stacey Abrams, the Democrat darling. Or dumpling would probably be more accurate, given how large she is.
The only thing that sticks out to me about her,
it's her
as
gut
much
or
as
her
her
teeth.
size as her teeth.
Yeah.
It's, everything about her is large, but those are the 2 main things you notice.
Yeah. There's a buck word
Well,
I
her
can't
brain
say.
isn't, I guess.
There's a buck word I want to say, but it's horribly southern and very offensive. So I will refrain from saying it, but the audience can know I'm thinking it if they know what I'm talking about. Because that's what I see when I see her. In a fair election, because Herschel's running, Kemp has it in the bag by proxy, and Kemp royally screwed up with the election. His Secretary of State is Brad Raffensperger, and Brad Raffensperger is a established.
In front of his name.
Yeah, he's an establishment uniparty state crony who is only concerned with himself and his personal wealth and power. And Brian Kemp was actually going to investigate the Georgia election and had been took a very strong stance very early against it. And then mysteriously, his daughter's fiance's car explodes on the interstate. Not crashes, explodes. And all of a sudden, Brian Kemp changes his mind. And these 2 things are just supposed to be totally unrelated, and we need to forget about that car explosion. I sent you the pictures the day it happened. Like, I'm not crazy, right? Tell the audience I'm not crazy.
No, hey man, the cops came once when my flatmate's car got torched by his jilted girlfriend, and the cops told us that cars sometimes do just spontaneously combust.
Yeah. I forget what the official story was on that, but it was obvious BS because that car looked like a car bomb had happened. You don't get that from a wreck. So, my position is I just don't believe the establishment on the story they gave about Kemp's daughter's fiance or boyfriend, I forget. So, after that, he changed his tune on the election and was intimidated. At least it was a very public intimidation, and I know exactly why he changed his tune. This makes it a little easier to vote for him because that's pretty severe intimidation. I could see somebody being system shocked by that, and he was really good on literally everything else. Kemp is not very smart as an individual, but he is very savvy. He is he was able to see COVID for what it was immediately and was the first governor to propose ending the lockdowns. He said, none of this. Georgia will not have a state-imposed lockdown. The counties still tried to do it, but he said no. And he got a coalition of the southern state leaders together to try and end them in as many southern states as quickly as possible. He was very, very good on that. He has made significant progress in putting a stop to abortion in Georgia. He has been a big force for that in making. He has told the legislature, if you pass it and it hinders abortion, I will sign it. And he has advocated for it and helped them push it very hard. That said, he is very, very dumb. He just does not understand general things about the world or general things in general.
Like
Like,
maybe China shouldn't control your ports.
he just doesn't understand international relations very well. Uh, I thought this was him. Turned out to be Raffensperger. Raffensperger was the one behind the deal to sell the port, because of course he was. So I thought this was Kemp's fault forever, and hated Kemp since then. But turns out it's not his fault. Well, it probably was partially his fault, but it was mostly Raffensperger's fault. Unfortunately, these two come as a package deal. So while Kemp is not the best governor candidate I've ever heard of, he is capable of doing the job, and he is willing to actually take action when the government isn't blowing up his friends and family.
Now, every election that I remember, the media has said that the Democrats have Georgia in the bag.
Yeah, because they've been trying to turn it blue forever. They just keep pumping that Atlanta suburban area full of more and more immigrants and more
MARTA
Democrat
users.
voters. Yeah, MARTA users is what we'll be nice with. And just expanding that metro area. And as it gets bigger, the Democrat influence expands with it. And that's why it's very important, if you live in Georgia, to stop that MARTA rail. At every election, there will be an issue on the last page of the ballot worded real funky. Whatever the option is that says, no, you can't continue building MARTA out here, push that one. We don't want that thing to expand.
MARTA is essentially a tumor used to turn the state blue.
Yeah, it is like the creep that the Zerg use in StarCraft. As it spreads, so too can the monsters go. And so we want to keep it as contained as possible. Because short of dropping a nuke on Atlanta, we can't reverse it. So we're gonna just have to live with stopping it. The rest of Georgia is incredibly red outside of Savannah, which is a small port city and only one district. Athens can sometimes go blue too. It's a college town. Depends on how energized the base is there, but they usually don't swing full blue. The rest of the state completely red, and the Reds are riled up to come and vote for Herschel. I think Kemp would have this in the bag in a fair election. If 2020 happens, though, and I suspect it's very possible, Raffensperger may be in cahoots with the good old land whale to get her in the governor's seat and himself in Secretary of State somehow, some way, through a legendarily close election that's called for her and him at the same time. If that happens, I'm going, you're doing the show on your own from now on.
Oh, no.
Because I will be a little hard to contact. I'm probably not joking, by the way. For the government, I'm totally joking.
Susan, you heard nothing.
Yep. But yeah, it all depends on how hard they're willing to go. And for Georgia, I bet they're willing to go pretty hard. They want to turn Georgia into a Democrat bastion in the South. In a sea of red, they want to make Georgia their blue outpost.
And it will be incredibly damaging to Republican morale as well.
Yeah, Georgia is a good. It used to be known for being the place where, traditional Southern hospitality was. We weren't Alabama, so you didn't hear banjos playing, even though Deliverance was filmed here. It's just a good place. I've always loved Georgia, and it felt bad for people that didn't live in a place like Georgia. Because I really do feel like I lucked out being born in this state. And to just see it torn to pieces and the potential dark futures ahead of it, it's heartbreaking. But all it means for me in terms of what I'm going to do is it's just more work I got to do. More people I got to talk to, more word I got to spread, and more firm convictions I got to take on is anything that opposes Stacey Abrams and the ideas that come with her, because she's just a bag for the most radical left progressive ideas you can imagine. She's like She's not even abortion till birth. She's you should just die if inflation's too much for you.
Yeah, yeah, she did blame inflation on people having children.
Yeah,
Like she's definitely in the depopulation camp.
yeah. Uh, so
That,
it'll-
but that said, she is also very stupid. So what
yeah,
comes out of her mouth, I doubt she understands even a fraction of it.
yeah.
She's just saying things that she's heard people say before, basically.
And she is also the go-to case for all Republicans to cite the hypocrisy of the Democrats. Yes, it's nice to cite the hypocrisy of the Democrats. I laugh too, but don't ever get it in your head that that's going to convince the Democrats to stop their
Yeah,
evil ways.
they don't care about hypocrisy. If they cared about hypocrisy, they would be on the right.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams has said she beat Brian Kemp in the 2016 election for ever now, or 2018 election, literally since the election ended, and has claimed that the election was stolen from her for uh, for a myriad of reasons that all involve
Uh,
somehow voter suppression. Although when she tries to cite it, uh, her arguments just devolve into racism without
Yeah, but
any
no,
substance to
nobody on the
them.
left cares about that. They think that's perfectly valid. I think that there's an open question as to whether Stacey Abrams is more valuable to the left as a winner or a loser. Like, because as a loser, they made a lot of hay off of her.
Yeah,
Like, without her, Warnock doesn't end up in the Senate.
yeah. If but establishing that outpost may just be too juicy. They've been trying forever, and it may be they decide to just take it. It's hard to call. Do what you can in Georgia. If you're a fellow Georgian, if you somehow stumble on this video, sign up to be a poll watcher like I did. Talk to people. Get to know people in your local area.
Real talk, you don't want that creature telling you what to do.
Yeah, just I can already tell you, I am. She can decree whatever she wants from her throne on high if she gets elected. She will have to come convince me herself.
I'm pretty sure the only decree she's interested in is having people bring her fried chicken.
Yeah, you done said it now. He's not from Georgia, folks. He doesn't know it's racist.
Have you
So,
seen the size of that woman?
yes, I know. I know. Fried chicken is a special connotation here in Georgia, though. Okay, next up. I'll save the Pennsylvania race for last. Uh, Kansas, I was surprised to find currently has a Democrat governor. Kansas, Cassis in the notes. Uh, they're usually a safe R. I'm not sure. Well, I know how they got a D. Probably something 2020 related happened in 2018, but or a special election happened. But yeah, Laura Kelly is, from what I can tell, not very popular, and so Kansas may shift back into Republican control, and all will be right with the world there again. Not a lot to say on that race. Oregon is interesting. Katie Brown is the current incumbent, and she's at the end of her term, and she oversaw the Summer of Love, as she called it, and the Chaz, led by Raz and his warlords.
But the
Uh,
idea of Oregon turning red doesn't fit in my brain. I can't conceive of it. It doesn't seem possible.
it doesn't seem possible because when people think of Oregon, Portland and Seattle, not Seattle's Washington, Portland dominates the conversation so much, but just like Atlanta, it's just a blue tumor. And if they're mad enough not to turn out to vote and the Reds are really fired up outside of it, and they don't have the proper 2020 ready to go in place, they could get a nut kick in this one. I don't know anything about Christine Drazan, the Republican, or Tina Kotek, the new Democrat that's they're putting up after since Brown's terms are up. Uh, that's not really important, though. The important thing is that Oregon appears to be in play. Do you imagine an Oregon with a Republican governor?
I feel like California would interfere somehow because they seem to think of Oregon as sort of like their pet ally.
Yeah. that place we go to make videos of all the rioting going on. I wonder if they're still going. I kind of stopped following that story. For all I know, they're still rioting.
Oh, I think I probably would have run out of energy at this point, but I mean, it doesn't really matter since Portland is under the control of Antifa anyway. It's not like their mayor has any power anymore.
Yeah, the most legitimate businesses have just pulled out of the state, pulled out of the city now, which is another reason people are like, maybe it's in play because people in Portland aren't there to go vote.
Because it's basically ruled by a gang now.
Yeah, and none of them are going to go vote. So you ain't going to get very as many votes for governor as you usually do from the deep blue area.
Well, a lot of those people are probably just squatting there. They're probably from out of state anyway.
Yeah, like Portland is such a disaster zone right now that it's entirely possible Oregon could go red. I mean, this is what happens when you let anarchy happen. I don't think it's likely. I just think it's a possibility.
I don't think it would be very helpful though, really, because without a red president to ensure that actual physical force gets sent to Portland to regain control over the city, it's still going to be a complete shit show.
Yeah, you would need a mayor of that city to be elected that was red and pulled a Rudy Giuliani on New York.
Yeah, this is even there. I don't think would be enough. I think that's in the interests, like it's in the interests of the current administration that Oregon turn red and Portland collapse under a red watch
Mm-hmm.
because that's more useful to them than Portland in their current state.
And Oregon, I think, only has 3 House seats. It's not a very populated state, all things considered. Because
So
it's
to them, if they feel that there's a good chance they're going to lose anyway, it might be more useful to them to pin Portland on the Republicans.
yeah. So yeah, that's Oregon. It's one to keep an eye on. Just the governor race, though. I don't know about the Senate races. But I, I I just got a hunch that it's technically possible. Next, we'll finally talk about this one. I've been putting it off because I just my brain doesn't process this one very well for several reasons. Pennsylvania Senate race between Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, nominally a Republican, and John Fetterman.
I have yet to hear him say anything that suggests to me that he is in any way a Republican.
Yeah, and then John Fetterman, the Democrat, also known as Tumor Neck, or that thing from the Goonies. So, Oz is a fake Republican and a rhino. It's he's Republican in name only, very literally. He has held extreme left positions most of his life, and is claiming he's turned on a few of them now, and is running on the Republican ticket. But the only reason he even had a shot at penetrating the primaries was name recognition and his money. And
I don't think either of those are the case. I think it's Trump. Trump is the reason.
yeah, and Trump, for some godforsaken reason, endorsed this mofo.
I
Trump,
think it's because they're both entertainment industry people. It's
yeah,
something as simple as that, I think.
Trump has the remarkable ability to just pick the worst people for so many things. And a little bit of a bad endorsement I could take, but Oz just has nothing to show that he is an actual conservative.
Yeah, there's nothing beneficial that he brings to the conservative movement whatsoever.
That said, his opponent is somehow even worse. Well,
The only politician in the United States who is more of a vegetable than Joe Biden.
the dude is a literal stroke victim.
He
Has
cannot hear. He cannot speak. He cannot think.
yeah,
What exactly is he going to do?
in a body politic that was originally created to be the debating body, the one that has to yell and scream at each other in a chamber until they hammer out the fine details of a law. At least on paper. This guy is who you're putting up to do that job. Okay.
I still been seeing a lot of people giving galaxy brain takes about how you don't need to be very clever. You
Oh,
just need to vote yes or no.
I,
Therefore,
I,
it doesn't matter who we send.
yeah, I've seen that too. Well, that's how Democrats think. They'll just vote for You could put a D on a glass of water in most Democrat districts and get the vote.
Yeah, well, I
Like,
mean that's what they think is basically everything has to be along party lines because they operate in that monolithic fashion generally, and that's probably why Tulsi Gabbard rebelled, was that she wanted the latitude to at least think about the topic she voted on,
but that's
and they
yeah,
don't want that. They
yeah,
just
but
want you to vote with the party at all times, and having somebody who physically is incapable of thinking for themselves is an ideal president and an ideal senator,
and when you
and
start,
so on.
if you have time to stop and think about what you're voting on, you realize, oh, this seems kind of dumb in a whole lot of cases. So yeah, so Pennsylvania is rife with 2020 isms that are likely to continue, just because it appears to be the most corrupt state in terms of its election officials.
Yeah, the idea of a legitimate election taking place in Pennsylvania is just kind of a joke.
So I would encourage Pennsylvanians. I don't know what to tell you to do. I want to tell you to go vote for Oz anyway. I want to tell you beating the Democrats is more important. He is a really bad candidate. He
He's
really,
such
really
a
is.
twat. But
And
I mean, the nearest sort of comparison that I can think of is sort of like the Tories in the UK. Like the Tories are just so useless. It's almost worse to send people to vote for the Tories. It's almost better to let the nation be punished by Labour instead.
yeah, you gotta do a risk assessment here. If you send Fetterman, you're sending a vegetable who's just going to vote Democrat on everything. That won't surprise anybody. If you send Oz, he has an opportunity to make a nuisance of himself, but may be able to be strong armed into voting our party line enough consistently by the party leadership and those in the Senate that we may be able to use him to help cockblock some things that the Democrats try to push.
Well, my concern though is that his left wing tendencies will just overflow elsewhere on the other issues,
Yeah,
and that would make everything worse in the long term. Like, I think that there is a case to be made for Pennsylvania being punished by having a vegetable. Like, this is the consequences of vote blue. No matter who, you better try harder next time.
yeah. This is all on you guys. You got to make this on your individual decision with the state. I don't feel comfortable telling you to go vote for Oz. I don't. And I also don't feel comfortable telling you just let John Fetterman take it. This is a hard call, and if I lived in Pennsylvania, I'd be mulling it over until election day.
Yeah, it's a really rough one. I can't say that there's a good answer in any direction. Oz is just, he's a quisling. He can't be trusted.
Yep. So,
His trustworthiness, to in my estimation, depends on how much he feels he owes personally to Donald Trump.
and he took Trump's name off of his website as soon as he got the endorsement.
Yeah. So this is just a career building move for him.
Yeah. So you can send him for a term and try to cock block some Democrat stuff and hope he doesn't do too much damage, or you can just let
I think
the
that
the
what he's
Goonies
angling
monster.
for is to replace Cheney.
I could see
I
that.
think that that's who he wants to be. He wants to be the Democrats' Republican.
Yeah, the Democrats' pet.
He's like, I'm the one who can compromise. I'm the one who can cross the aisle. I'm the one who can make things bipartisan. I think that's who he wants to be.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, folks. The country's too divided for that thing right now. That kind of thinking right now. But
Yeah, yeah. If you vote for Oz, you're effectively voting for a D anyway. So
yeah, the only benefit to voting for Oz is he may be able to get strong armed into blocking stuff. And
just write in Kanye. It'll be fine. I don't know if you
yeah,
can do write-ins in these elections, but write in
you,
Kanye anyway.
you can write it in the Georgia one. I don't know about the Pennsylvania one. Uh, so yeah, there's that one.
Hasn't
Apparently,
write-in ever won before?
I don't think so. Although I've been told I've been written in for various silly positions that didn't have a candidate before by my friends that they would laugh if I actually got the position for. Stuff like county trash commissioner. So
That's an elected position.
At one time it was. The trash industry is now semi-privatized. It's not owned by the county anymore.
What about dog catcher? Is it still a thing?
I don't know. I just asked Abo about this a few days ago, and I don't think he had a clear answer. So, those are all the races I have noted. Can you think of any others off the top of your head?
I don't really have anything specific to say. Like the only sort of governance things that make it to New Zealand media is stuff that where they need somebody to pick on who isn't named Trump, so it'll probably be DeSantis.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just not there's not that much American politics that will make it to our media in detail, other than just Trump bashing, just general purpose Trump bashing. They don't have any reason to bash Trump. There's no motivation. There's nothing in it for them, but they do. They do it because they feel they're supposed to, because they're the media, and
Yeah.
that's what the media does.
Yep. They want to feel like they were included in that shame email that went out from CNN.
Like
But
there's not really anything in it for them. They're not connected to the apparatus the way the media in the US is directly connected to the Democrat apparatus. The New Zealand they're not, but they still bash Trump anyway because they're just following the tastemakers in the US.
yeah. So, um, we might get to DeSantis this show. If we do, I want to save him for last. We have a bunch of miscellaneous topics that will all be influences on this current election that I want to go through while we're still on the elections thing. So, the big one is worth it. Is worth talking about first. Uh, we have out of control inflation all under the Democrats' watch, all caused by lefty policies and, to be fair, stupid policies by Republicans who got strong armed into voting for free handouts during the Kung Flu.
Yeah, it's just another one of those situations where Trump listens to people where he shouldn't have.
Yep, he surrounded himself with people that gave him bad advice.
With Jared Kushner.
Yeah, and he naively believed that 2 weeks to slow the spread would stay at 2 weeks. Oh, you sweet summer child. Let me tell you about the way power works. So, during their radical power grab, a whole lot of money got thrown around because when you're trying to keep the populace complacent during your ridiculous power grab and setting up of the 2020 situation, their solution was just to throw money literally at the people. And money printer went burr, like it's never gone burr before. And this is a big part of the inflation. So first, you have the question, how big is it? I have notes for the US here. And from what I have personally experienced, I'm not going to go to any index and look it up because those often lie. They often have an interest involved in when they post the multipliers. They're either too big or too small. So I will just give you a rough idea of what I have seen in the cost and increase in prices. Gas and food prices are the most front-facing and visibly impacted because gas prices are on big signs outside of gas stations, and you have to buy food every week or every 2 weeks or so. And if you're a normal human being, so you see the food prices a lot, or if you just go to fast food a lot. So gas prices, in general, they were around $1.70 to $2.30, depending on where you lived in the US. Now they're anywhere between like $3.50 and about $6 per gallon.
In New Zealand, we've got a similar situation, although our petrol is vastly more expensive than yours to begin with. Vastly more expensive. Before things all went to hell, you were looking at about $1.50 to $1.60 per liter. And at present, they're a little bit under. They're sort of, I would say, they're probably roughly $2.60 now, roughly. Except that's deceptive because, as a method of avoiding catastrophe, the government suspended fuel excise tax, and without that, we would be looking at about $3.20 per liter.
Yep.
So we're looking at a approximate doubling of fuel prices. As far as what I've seen in the supermarket, we're looking at about 25% across the board. That's been my sort of napkin calculation from my shopping each week.
Yeah. Uh, Food prices have jacked themselves way more in the US as a percentage. I'm looking at paying probably about 60% more on
Yeah,
average.
I'm talking on on a per item basis. I'm looking at about about a quarter for every individual item. I mainly buy highly processed stuff because I'm a crappy cook. If I look at stuff that's in a more unprocessed state, it's a lot worse. Um, we're looking at about 60% increase for
Yeah.
stuff that's very unprocessed.
Yeah, forget steak. That's twice the cost of what it used to be here. Forget any kind of beef product that's a cut of beef you would throw on the grill. That
Yeah,
stuff is way too expensive now.
the only meats that haven't increased by a massive amount are probably chicken. Chicken has gone up by about 30%, like most other items, but the red meats are very, 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 very much more expensive.
Yeah, it's 100 to 150 for all red meats in the US. Fish, surprisingly, have weathered it fairly well. Um, I guess because you don't need a ranch to grow fish. So,
If a fish here is still up by about 25%, like
yeah,
most things.
yeah, it's gone
But
in line with
the
everything
fresher it
else.
is, the more expensive it is.
Yeah,
So
the sushi bar is about the only place I can see. They have a sushi bar at Publix where they make fresh sushi every day. They let people come by and put it in their. They put it in the little custom baggie or package, and you can just pick it up and put it in your bag and take it home. And they put on a big warning label on the box. Uh, Eat as soon as you get home, or refrigerate and eat within 24 hours.
well, that's standard for sushi. You're not supposed to eat it after 24 hours.
Yeah,
Which is what the excuse I use to pilfer huge amounts of sushi from work after every shared lunch because we'll get catering sushi in, and I'll just steal all the leftovers and have it for dinner as well.
yeah. Standard fish like flounder and stuff. I haven't looked at. It's there, but I just haven't stared at the prices because I don't buy that type of fish. Um, General groceries, 30 to 60. 60 seems about more likely for most of them. Um, we've had a huge increase in food cost. Everything feels like it's gone. Stuff that was $1.50 is now $2.30 to $2.50.
Yeah, the one that in New Zealand is sort of like famous for having gone up is cheese, which has gone up from about $9 per kilo to probably about 16 or so. So it's nearly a doubling of cost for cheese, and we're a dairy producing country.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the cheese very closely, most because the label at the supermarket is very, very tiny. So I in the frozen food section where the cheese is at. So I haven't actually paid that much attention to it. I just get my thing of cheese because I need cheese. Can't make ham and cheese
Dairy
sandwiches.
is very, very important to the New Zealand economy as one of our sort of central tent poles. So to see it go up that much, like somebody actually did this, and this was some months ago. It's probably even worse now. Somebody found that it was cheaper to to order all of their non-perishables online and have them shipped to New Zealand from Australia than to buy locally.
Good lord. So yeah, that's the most forward facing. Those are your day to day costs, stuff that you need to continue living, stuff that you need to continue driving your car so you can keep working. For the most case, because everybody in the U.S. drives a car. Uh, Everybody has to drive for work. Even I, who has their office literally next door these days, still has to go drive to the post office and go drive to job sites. We still have to drive
I've
a
got a
lot.
half an hour plus. I've got a half an hour plus commute to and from work each day, so petrol prices hurt me a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at on the most forward-facing costs that everybody knows about. Let's talk about some not little known, but ones you probably don't think about as much. The industrial supplies. You probably heard they've been hit, but I'll tell you how I've seen them be hit. Steel and fiberglass were the biggest ones. Fiberglass stabilized eventually at about a 30 to 40% increase. And it's now in supply, but supply was very short for a while for some reason. Uh, Apparently, they just didn't stock enough at any of the manufacturers that I rep for the products that use fiberglass because they didn't expect the increase in demand for it during COOF because a whole lot of government entities got government handout money and they wanted to expand, and this meant they needed to use their fiberglass that they had, and they just didn't have any for a while. But they that boom has since ended, and now I can get fiberglass basins for the pumps that I sell delivered usually within 2 weeks, and their price has only increased about 30 to 40% for what I deal with on my other prices. That is cheap. Steel is the problem. Steel, and especially stainless steel, no, I don't know the exact difference, uh, is over 2 times as expensive as it used to be. And is significantly harder to get because its prices increase so much, people just don't keep as much stocked.
Well, they're two fundamentally different items used for fundamentally different things. But are we talking about steel that is being smelted in the United States, or that's being smelted in China and shipped to the United States?
I do not actually know. I don't know. I don't think Weil does its own smelting, so they're our our main manufacturer we work with.
Yeah, well, the question is whether or not they're buying their supplies in from overseas or whether they're buying them
They
locally.
they claim it's all sourced from the U.S., but that sticker can say whatever it wants. They may be taking Chinese underhand deals for all I know, and buying out of country anyway. Because they do have the sticker that says all this product is sourced and made in America. And to get that sticker, you have to get all your components from America. All the raw materials have to come from America. What that means for the steel itself, I have no idea, as far as that question goes. Because just because they have that sticker and certificate doesn't mean anything. Because companies lie. Like, I shouldn't talk bad about a company I rep for, but I don't trust any company. So I'm not ragging on them specifically. So steel is, because it's so expensive now. We need this for things like quick removal systems, little rails you can send down in the basin to pull the pumps up with. We need this for stainless steel cases for explosion-proof variants of pumps, for corrosion-resistant pumps, ones that you just want to generally be stronger because bigger crap may be running into them. Uh, and they just don't keep as much stocked. They rarely have a surplus and have to order it as stainless steel orders come in now because it's just too expensive. And the prices have skyrocketed. And in order to get them into viable range, well, you'd think that'd be good for me as the salesperson because I get to make whatever my markup is. I can't mark it up very much because the price increase has been so astronomical. I'm in danger of causing even contractors that are getting government money to balk at it.
Well, everybody's gonna have to do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I just cannot justify taking a pump that used to cost $6,000 and now costs over $12,000 and doing a 50% markup on it. That is going to make the contractor's eyeballs jump out of their head. So that's one aspect of things as far as the materials that I've noticed are in short supply. Um, and the other thing, the much more important and impactful thing, is freight. And when I say freight, I mean shipping in general, but particularly freight, because freight has to run on diesel trucks, and you have to put them on the land carriers that move them all the way across the country, and they have to go on pallets. All the stuff you sell that gets shipped via freight, and because of the cost of fuel for these things right now, freight prices have quadrupled at minimum. It would probably cost me $80 to $100 to ship a standard duplex system, which is 2 pumps, a control panel, a removal system, and some float switches. So the only things of weight there are the control panel and the pumps. So it'd be about 3 crates worth of stuff inside of a truck. Standard wooden crates, and that would cost me $80 to $100. consistently I'm getting freight charge bills from the freight companies for $450. And I can't afford to eat that cost. So guess who gets that cost? It just gets straight added to the invoice of my customer. So they're the ones that have to pay it. And then if they're a contractor or they're another outlet that's like Art Plumbing that just buys from us to do a job and just have us supply them, they then pass that markup onto their customer again. It gets added into their total that they quote them and then factored into their multiplier. So the price increase just keeps getting passed along, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And this is why you're seeing an increase in literally everything, even stuff you wouldn't think would matter, is freight or shipping. Shipping for smaller items isn't as bad because those trucks usually aren't filled to the brim when they go out. You're not competing for truck space. So they can usually just pack in more crap, and they just have that truck make more stops instead of having to send out even more trucks, which uses even more gas every day, like you do with freight. So we've seen small price increases relative to the freight of 20 to 80% increase for small shipping. Products that I sell would usually cost about $8 to ship, like some float switches or something. A small package of less than 5 pounds via UPS ground, that'll now cost you about $28. Uh, so more like 150% actually, but I don't like thinking about numbers increasing that much, so I wrote down the wrong percentage. Oh, goodness me. In addition to this, all of our manufacturers, except for Top, our basic manufacturer, have all said there's just a flat 6% surcharge on every single order that's temporary, and that temporary has been like 14 months now that we have to pay.
It's just an excuse not to have to redo their catalog.
Yeah, because they're going to be redoing it nonstop all the time, and they are already adjusting prices nonstop and hiking prices, but they inevitably won't have gotten around to something that needs a price increase. So to make up for the difference, every single order incurs a 6% surcharge. 6% is a lot, folks. On your material cost for what you're selling, that's a ton. Especially after you've already calculated everything else. So what I've started doing is, once again, that cost gets passed off to the customer. I will multiply every single item before I apply my final multiplier to it. I'll multiply it by 1.06. So you're getting about an 8% markup extra because of that surcharge.
Good old Biden inflation, huh?
Yep. And this is how it works the whole way down the chain. Everybody will take my markup that makes it cost more, in addition to the price increase I got from the manufacturer. And if they have to sell it again or sell it to the building or the people that are actually having the stuff installed, they're going to mark it up again. And my already increased price is going to be further multiplied. And this is how inflation gets really out of whack when you increase things like fuel costs that I have to just straight add, or you make material costs so bad that a surcharge has to be tacked on. So that's for business stuff what I've seen and how
We've
inflation
seen a
is going.
similar phenomenon here. Like all of our consumables for laboratory work and that have gone way up, and most of it is due to the shipping. It's it's not like the other things haven't also gone up, although some things have just become unsourceable because we can't import small amounts of them or whatever. Like New Zealand just doesn't use enough volume for certain things or whatever, so we can't bring them into country, that type of thing. But generally speaking, the biggest influence is the sheer cost of moving things around.
Yep. So there you have our personal experience with it. The government claims that there is no recession despite all this inflation and the negative GDP growth it's incurred, despite it happening 2 terms in a row. But that's because the current administration doesn't believe in the dictionary. Or they just went and changed the dictionary, which seems more likely. They probably have phoned Webster already. And yeah, It's out of hand. Everybody is penny pension. You as the listener to this, I'm sure are aware that all of a sudden you don't have as much money as you used to because everything costs so much more. Like we all warned you it would when the very first COVID checks went out. I said the C word. Oh well.
Free money has no cost to it, right? It's free.
We all told you this was going to happen. This was the only road this could go down. The only question was how much. And because everybody was all gung ho and the governments were all gung ho to just let that money printer go burr, we got it good and hard.
Yeah,
And we
unfortunately,
told you all
we
this was
played
coming.
stupid games and we won stupid prizes.
I feel so impotent discussing this inflation in a way because we did tell people. I knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. We tried to tell people, but we don't have the kind of power we need to do anything about it. It's just gonna. We can see the train coming, but we're in a tunnel and there's nowhere to dodge.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, since ultimately the economies of the world have become too interlinked. So inflation in one place is going to become inflation everywhere, whether we like it or not. So even if individual countries were able to preserve their economic status, it would still just be a delayed effect, really. But yeah, the only good thing to come out of it is that I think it could potentially lead to people becoming a bit more aware about what actually happens when the government gives you things for quote unquote free. Like
Ev-
it's no matter how much Biden's administration tries to claim inflation isn't bad, I'm pretty sure that even the normies are starting to realize that their bills have gone up.
yeah, and here's the thing about inflation: your paycheck doesn't go up alongside of it. Those of you listening to this podcast that have made it this far probably have a job or have had a job in the past and are looking for one. You know that you don't get a raise very often, and the company is usually very reluctant to do raises. And if costs have just skyrocketed, your company is going to be even more reluctant to do raises because they've got to figure out how to work in these new costs. And until, which is going to take years most times, until the company can pass these costs off to their customer and start making up the difference and are getting the same consistent business again, you're not getting a raise. I do
Yeah,
not have to worry about this, however. I write my own paycheck.
yeah. There's no money for them to give you a raise out of.
Yeah.
Like, no, everybody is poor. That's just the way things are right now.
Yeah, until their money supply gets built up from passing the cost to their customers, they cannot give you a raise. And this will sometimes take years. So you're going to be stuck with the same paycheck. Let's say you make like 3,500 a month and you were spending 1,500 of it before. Well, the cost just doubled. You have 500 bucks left. And all of that probably went to taxes. So
And
you're now
anything that you're fortunate enough to put into savings is decreasing in value every second that this inflation continues at the rate that it's going.
yeah, any money you have that you have not spent is losing value every penny that inflation jacks the price of things up because the dollars you have saved are less powerful. And this is a concept that is just very hard to get people to understand, especially, as always, the boomer cons.
I don't understand why. Like, what is it about them that makes them so specially blind about virtually everything? It doesn't seem to me very complicated to explain. Oh, well, when the government inflates the economy, they're just trying to tax you without you knowing it.
It's
It's
because
taxation. Everybody knows that, I thought.
they lived in a relatively peaceful and prosperous time, had no real conflict except for the Red Scare going on, and the Vietnam War and the Korean War, which were overseas and didn't incur the draft. And yeah, just they were allowed to lead self-indulgent lifestyles that just let them build a comfortable life, and they just have kind of learned to go with the flow, and that's all they know how to do. They are incapable of thinking for themselves, it seems, or realizing there's a problem with the way things are going, or that maybe something's a bit broken with the system that you love so much that's treated you so good because it's out of juice and it ain't treating me very good. So that's a very simple way. Probably not exactly what I think of the boomer cons. But they just make me so mad. I don't think rationally when it comes to the boomercons. They've really become my biggest bugbear with politics. So we defined what a recession is. Uh, what's the government doing about it? Well, the Biden government is making it worse.
That's how you solve inflation, right? That's what our
It,
government did. Our government, oh, energy prices are going up. We better give everybody some free money.
yeah,
So I'm collecting like I don't know what it is. It's something like $140 every month for 3 months or something from the government to allegedly defray the cost of my power bill. Except I'm just paying tax,
yeah,
so not benefiting me in any way.
yeah. And in the U.S., we had the infamous Inflation Reduction Act, which in no way, shape, or form would reduce inflation. And any cursory glance at it would tell you that's just going to make things worse by it being entirely about greeny energy initiatives.
How many pages is the Inflation Reduction Act? I'm sort of curious.
I'm sure it's another door stopper, like most of them are. So yeah, that's uh, that's our government's response to it currently, because there just ain't a strong conservative government in the world right now. There's no government conserving anything, and so the only thing they know how to do is continue doing what they've been doing, which is be the government and make things worse.
It's a it's allegedly a slimmed down version of the Build Back Better bill, therefore is only 750 pages long.
Gravy.
This one says it's 730, so I'd say 700 and something.
Yeah, and it just kills more traditional energy production and puts in more greeny initiatives that'll wind up costing us more energy. The energy costs are creeping up in the U.S., but they haven't hit as bad as in other parts of the English-speaking world yet. We're getting there. We're not there yet. Not as bad as
I
you
think
guys.
are going to get sodomized by it first. It's the people who are dealing with Russia who are going to get strangulated most. So that does include the UK, but it also includes most of Western Europe and Central Europe and Eastern Europe and basically all of Europe.
Yeah, the memes out of Germany and how big their power bills are. If they weren't so tragic, they would be hilarious. Just for how big that number is.
Well, I mean, they wanted to be the ones to lead the charge into renewable energy. Let's see that how that worked out for them.
Yep. So our governments are a bunch of idiots. Surprise, surprise. And the less they do, the better. But they can't help themselves. Now, you had another question about how the Federal Reserve Bank works for dummies.
Yeah, because I don't know if it works the same as our Reserve Bank. Our Reserve Bank creates adjusts the official cash rate to create an interest rate corridor between official cash rate plus 0.5% and a official cash rate minus 0.5% to set the sort of floor and ceiling interest rates for bank lending, because the Reserve Bank of New Zealand will offer rates of exchange at those rates that have been set in order to ensure that any bank that tries to loan something to another bank at a non-competitive rate is going to be outcompeted by the Reserve Bank. Therefore, they have to operate within that corridor.
So I'm operating from a econ class from forever ago on how the Fed works here, because it's much of a muchness into its actual mechanics. It boils down to it's an evil entity that Kanye would not approve of. Um,
Why are you going to go there, man?
despite its name of the Federal Reserve, it's this monster is technically a private bank on paper. It's given power explicitly by the legislation of the United Legislature of the United States, and has several exclusive powers to monitor relating to monetary policy, and it has the exclusive right to print money. Uh, its status as a technically private institution is only worth noting because it means it doesn't have to have government oversight.
But aren't the people in charge appointed by the incumbent government?
Yeah,
So that just makes it a government department.
you understand why it's dumb now. Nothing about the Federal Reserve makes sense. It is just a monster. Now, it is a very confusing monster. So the way I thought it was supposed to operate was Fed prints money, Congress or the banks have spent or loaned more money than they have, the Fed prints more money, and the Congress and or the banks technically have to pay that money back. In practice, what actually happens is they run out of money, the Fed prints more money, and then Congress or the banks only pay the interest back on and only the interest only applies to the money taken out at that time, and then the rest of it just goes into the deficit. And the rest of and where does that money actually go? Well, it's now distributed off to whatever corner of the country or the world that they sent it to. They needed some government project somewhere. They needed some war
More than
fought
likely,
somewhere.
they would just create another department and hire a bunch of bureaucrats to staff it, and then pay them a salary.
Now, it has been a very long time since I took that econ class, and I'm pulling from memory on the Fed because the Fed is a very complicated monster. So the fine details may contradict me a little bit, but from my econ class and from how I've always seen the thing work, that's how it works. And they can
Yeah.
influence mortgage and mortgage rates and other loan rates by increasing their interest rate on the banks and that other banks of the nation, so that the money they do have to pay back to the Fed is bigger, and they have to pass that cost on to you, which means a higher interest rate on all your loans that you take out of the bank.
Yeah, sounds roughly similar to what we have.
Yeah. So
I don't know how our Reserve Bank is structured legislatively. I think it is also one of those things that's sort of like independent on paper, but not really.
yeah, it's
But not sure why that's the case for reserve banks.
the Federal Reserve has a very storied history of many administrations trying to kill it before it became a thing. Hamilton wanted it, Jefferson didn't, and for the longest time, the Jeffersonians tried to kill it. Every subsequent Jeffersonian president, all the way to Andrew Jackson, with him on his deathbed declaring his greatest accomplishment was, I killed the bank. Well, he killed it for a little bit. He didn't keep it dead. uh, Trying to keep this thing dead or bring it to life. So its history in the U.S. makes it even more confusing to figure out how it actually is supposed to work, because half the people wanted it made and half the people didn't.
Yeah, actually, it looks like the New Zealand government owns the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, or has done since 1936. But since it was established in 1934, I don't know what was happening during those first 2 years.
Yeah.
But it has statutory independence, so I have no idea what that means. I guess that means that the government doesn't set their policy directly,
I
but
suppose so.
they're owed a dividend each year from the Reserve Bank, since it's a state enterprise of sorts.
I see. Yeah, I'm not sure about yours. I'm not even sure about ours. And when it comes to how their money actually flows and what they're owed it exactly and how those payments work. So you're free to go look up more information on the Fed if you want. It's a very complicated entity, so you're going to be there a while if you do.
Is that the one that Yellen got put in charge of?
I think so.
She's a communist.
Yes,
Why would you put a communist in charge of the Fed?
because some agency thought it was a good idea and told Biden to do it, and he said, "Okay, what am I signing?" Moving on. Another big issue this election. Only big in some states, but worth noting: the border crisis. Any state that is a target for migrants and illegal immigrants, or yeah, just illegal aliens, is going to have this as at least a minor issue. For Georgia, it's a moderate issue. There are a lot of Mexicans that come here illegally every single year. They see how pretty Georgia is and want to come make it worse.
Well, somebody's got to do the landscaping.
I mean, they do. They work really cheap. You can drive down to the lots by some Home Depots, and where a bunch of them just hang out and yell for somebody that speaks English. A guy that kind of speaks English will jump in the truck and bring about 7 of his boys with you. They'll all just jump in the back, and you drive them to whatever project you need them to do. You pay them like $3 an hour. This is how contracting gets done for the smaller scale stuff in Georgia. They don't have workforces; they have Mexicans. So now the knock on effect of this is people that could actually do good work that they have to do well in order to get a paycheck for uh, have to compete with that, and it's hard to beat $3 an hour. So if you're a voting Georgian, you kind of want less of these people because that's generally speaking the most visible way you see them. The other way is they come here and they don't know what to do, and they just kind of squat because they don't have anywhere to go and they have no resources. So they usually wind up either in the homeless camps in Atlanta or as vagrants that just wander the state. The Biden admin has refused to do anything about it. They want these people to come in. They have, as we mentioned before, yelled at the counties in Arizona and the cities within them that put up the barricades with the shipping containers at the border wall and holes in it, and told them to take them down, citing it. I believe they said it was inhumane.
Aristile, they told me they weren't interested in demographic change.
Oh yeah. Never mind. They'll tell you to your face that it needs to happen. At the same time, out the other side, they'll say, no, 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 it's just conspiracy theory, as with many things the Democrats do. So yeah, that's the border crisis. It has not changed much. I think we're at 14 million Mexicans have come in the last 2 years. Mexicans and Puerto Ricans have come in just the last 2 years. That number might have been fudged. I'm pulling that from mostly memory, so don't quote me on that one. And I think I saw the estimate on Patriots.win, so the number's even more suspect. But take that how you will. Point is, more than ever before, and a lot of them have come in lately, and it's very obvious. I imagine in Texas and Arizona, they're even more visible, and people are probably not very happy. So, energy crisis we talked about, housing crisis. So, I reached a point where the houses crept out of my reach completely and continued to go and go and go and haven't stopped. You managed to snag an apartment.
Well, I've replaced a rent. I don't own one, and I never will, because New Zealand has the most famously overheated housing market in the entire world. Like, you have to be a house like the entry level. Sort of like if you live in a city like I do, the entry level that you need to get a house is somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million, unless you don't mind having an extremely small house. Like,
Yeah,
generally, buying a house is basically not a possibility for most people. It's that bad, and the quality of houses in New Zealand is very low, so you're not getting a good enduring investment for the generations of your family to come either. You're getting a relatively trash house that needs to constantly be renovated in order to keep it in good condition.
yeah,
So yeah, it's the market is very bad. The rental market is also very bad, but they want the rental market operational since, that's BlackRock's big ambition, right? Turn everybody into a renter. Um, so yeah, the buying a house is not a great idea in New Zealand, unfortunately, because of the interest rates being very, 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 very low up until the recent economic calamities. Um, has resulted in there basically being an overclass and an underclass in the property market. There is a surprisingly small section of New Zealand that owns a house. There is a very disproportionate number of people who own more than one house, and a disproportionate number of people who own no house and can't get on the bottom of the property ladder. That's going to be the bulk of people in the country now. Cannot get on the property ladder because it's too expensive. Nobody has the money for it. The interest rates won't support it. But lots of people own more than one house because New Zealanders New Zealanders don't like investing on the stock market. They buy property. They always buy property. They have more confidence in property than they do in stocks, and there's not a totally unreasonable way of thinking. But when everybody in the country tries to do it at the same time, it creates massive housing shortages, which is what we've currently got now. We have housing shortages. We've got a market that has been operated in irresponsibly by people who have been inspired to act irresponsibly by artificially depressed interest rates. Basically, the whole thing has become a humongous disaster, and it's going to go into a tailspin, and there's not really a way of getting out of it at this point. It's
Yeah.
a complete um, until the housing market actually crashes proper and things have to undergo a forced reset. Nothing will change, and when that happens, it's not going to be good for anybody because there are lots of people like I know a guy whose sister is heavily invested in property, but having followed the trend of heavily investing in property, she's basically sitting atop a pyramid scheme of her own devising at this point, where her latest house is financed by the previous one, is financed by the previous one, is financed by the previous one, type of thing. And when that all falls apart, she's going to be left with no liquidity, an enormous bill, and an inability to move her property to
Mm-hmm.
actually make good on the financial security it was supposed to provide.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of New Zealanders who have postured themselves. So when I say a lot, that doesn't mean that there's a million of them. It's like a quarter of the country. I don't mean that. I mean that there's a disproportionate amount that you would find in a normal housing market because New Zealand is quite famously not a normal housing market. The relative cost relative to buying power in New Zealand for housing is equivalent to like Dubai or Los Angeles. Like it's that level.
Yeah.
That level of see.
So
And anybody who lives in America has probably heard the stories about what housing and rent costs in California.
yeah, it's not quite that bad here, but it's still completely out of reach. Uh, if you wanted to buy a small roadside ranch house that's old and used, uh, it would cost you about 120 to 150,000 dollars back in 2017. That was a lot, but you could still find really junk ones that needed some help for about 66,000 if you were lucky. We had a pretty big bubble blow up in the 3 years that followed, and it's only continued to slightly get worse and worse and worse. That same house now would likely run you anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000, and you'd have to pay a higher minimum mortgage to boot because the insurance rates on the banks right now are ridiculous. Or not the insurance rates, the interest rates. So
Yeah, most generally speaking these days, the price of a a house from say 5 to 10 years ago is the price of a deposit on a house now.
yeah, you would to have the money to make a sizable down payment on a house on a single income is just not possible.
I'm talking about minimum deposit as well. I'm not talking about a reasonable down payment.
Yeah,
I'm talking about just barely enough to convince them to give you a mortgage.
yeah, unless you have 6 digits in front of the period on your paycheck, in either of our countries, I don't think you can make a deposit comfortably on a house.
Yeah, I don't think as things stand, I don't think that I will ever be able to own a house because the inflation is happening faster than I can save money, and because of the costs, increase in cost of living, I'm basically not managing to save money anymore. Like I've been in the workforce when I abandoned academia and moved into the workforce like 5 years ago. I used to be saving quite a reasonable amount of money. I built up a reasonable amount of money to the point where, you know, maybe one day by the time I retired, I might be able to get a house. Maybe. Nowadays, I can't save anything. It all goes on cost of living because
Yep.
that's how much it's increased.
I've had to both up my pay and cut my costs to stop myself from going negative on my funds every month. It's I had the luxury to do that because I work for a small business and I am the everything at that business. While not officially, I am functionally so. This means I'm the one that writes the paychecks. So I have the ability to do that. Everybody else in the world does not have that luxury. And I've still had to cut stuff out. Like my food costs have gone down significantly. I've taken it as a time to I've taken the
Tighten your belt,
opportunity.
literally.
Yeah, I need to lose the jiggle physics on my gut. So I've been for the past since Tuesday. I've been doing really good. I've dropped about 4 pounds. It feels like when I stand on the scale, but a bunch of that's water weight. So we'll see how much of it stays off. But yeah, I'm already feeling better, despite the fact I have no food in me and have feel like I'm moving a little bit slower. So uh, that's it for the major issues. There we've covered. We haven't. I didn't write anything down for the crime crisis because it's only relevant to deep blue areas, and I don't think it's enough to swing anything.
Yeah, well, the thing is that when they talk about crime, they usually fudge the numbers anyway. Like crime is definitely spiraling ever upward in those blue areas in a radical, radical way. But they will just change the way that they calculate the statistics to make it look less bad.
Yeah,
The
they'll
the usual rule of thumb that people will tell you that you should use, and is a reasonably logical one, is that don't bother to look at the crime rate if you want to know how much crime there is. Look at the murder rate and then just assume that all the other crime is moving roughly in parallel to that. Number one, that's usually the case. And number two, the murder rate is the one that you should peg it to and not any other type of crime because cadavers are the hardest thing to get rid of. It's very easy to sweep other types of crime under the rug because they're usually things that are like financial, like fraud and theft and that
white
type
collar
of thing.
crimes. Yeah,
Well, not necessarily white collar crimes. Burglary is also financial crime.
I guess so. Yeah,
Like, because nobody can see the effect of that crime on anything but somebody's bank account. So it's easy to just brush it aside. And things like rape and that's basically crimes against human dignity. So you can sweep those under the rug as well as the people of the UK found out with their police. Um, with murders, somebody has disappeared and a body has shown up. So you've got to count that somehow because you've literally got a corpse on your hands that you need to deal with.
I
So
mean,
generally speaking, it's harder to cover that stuff up, and therefore the movement of the murder rate over time is a better watermark for what crime is doing as a whole.
yeah,
But what
and
they tell you the crime statistics are not.
if you want to see the king of crime, always you if you want your upper end point, you can look to Admiral Akbar's city of Chicago.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't know about that because remember, crime was legalized in California,
That's true,
so it's not a crime anymore. You're not going to go. You're not going to be
but
arrested for it, provided the value is like under $900 or whatever
yeah,
when you steal things.
I don't know how San Francisco and the like are keeping their companies that they do still have there.
They
Most,
aren't.
yeah, a
Like
bunch of
any
them
companies
pulled
that
out.
are any country companies that are still there are trying to find the capital to leave.
Yeah,
Like nobody wants to be there. There's nobody who's loyal to it. Nobody's doggedly digging in to try and stay.
yeah, I just I know there are some, but I see story after story of Starbucks, Walgreens, etc. closes in San Francisco or wherever in Cali because they just can't deal with the loss of revenue of their stuff just being stolen. That's okay. They'll go move somewhere else and vote the exact same way.
Yeah, I'll try and turn everywhere into San Francisco. What could
Yep,
possibly go wrong?
it is truly a wonder these people and how they just keep doing the same thing and expecting something different to happen. Uh, which brings us to a good segue into a part of the rampant corruption that's going on. We covered the rhinos already in the election departments for the most part. The fuzz are not your friend. Republicans, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to have a nice directed conversation at you that's more of a PSA than a discussion between me and Vol. You boomer cons, you Republicans in general, for the love of everything, get the thin blue line sticker off your car. It's cringy, and the first group of people that's going to come for your butt when uh when the new commissar issues his edict and says that you have violated it, it's going to be the fuzz, and the fuzz will do it without question. And the fuzz already do this junk without question. If the fuzz show up at your house, the only correct answer is no, you can't come in. and I'll have to talk to my lawyer. You say nothing else, you do not let them in. You do not open the door. You do not interact with the fuzz. The fuzz are a necessary evil to an ordered society. You cannot have a society without an equivalent to the fuzz. But you and the fuzz are not friends. The fuzz and you are always, always in an adversarial relationship if they are involved in your life in any way, shape, or form. I do not know how you don't understand this. I
Yeah, the purpose of a copper is to look for people who are doing something wrong and persecute them. Like the fact that they aren't persecuting you now just means that they haven't found an excuse to do it yet. It is not to protect and serve. It is to put people behind bars. That is what they do.
it is to meet their bust quota. Like this has been something that ever since 2020 has driven me up the wall. Is people coming out on the right as massive support for the police who were just 10 minutes ago, tasing us for showing up unmasked at soccer games. Like
Yeah,
this is
that was that way of thinking has basically evaporated in New Zealand. The police are our friends attitude has basically disappeared like snow in the sunlight since the lockdowns because they conducted extrajudicial raids on people's houses to check how many people were there to make sure they weren't gathering in groups. Lots and lots of people were persecuted by the police. They are now sort of officially not friends of the people in New Zealand, and it's only gotten worse when they deputized people on basis of blood to help them enforce that stuff.
mm,
So there's basically nobody in New Zealand who thinks that the cops are your friends.
it has been dying out. Thankfully, people are finally starting to realize the fuzz aren't your friends, but that there's just too many hangers on for me to feel comfortable. People like my dad, the definition of boomercon. No, people, no, stop it. We are eventually going to be so opposed to the fuzz, and the fuzz are going to be seen as the enemy because they will just be enforcing the cathedral's orders. And you can thank them for their service while they're dragging you off to Gitmo. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah,
that was
well, they do that because that's their job. That's what they've signed up to do. They act at the government's pleasure, and that's always been the case. I don't understand why people have this strange idea that the police serve the law as though the law isn't just something defined by the government.
yeah, that's a
They aren't,
Hollywood fantasy.
unemployed to be good people. They're employed to do precisely as the government tells them.
Yeah. So that PSA out of the way. I don't really want to touch on Ukraine this show because we're already at almost 4 hours. Um, it is a topic worth noting, but I don't think it'll influence the election at all. As much as some people are
Realistically,
pretending
it
it will.
should.
Yeah,
It should, because that's where a lot of your money is going currently.
I know, but I want to save the Ukraine discussion for a bigger net discussion once the conflict is over. I think.
I don't think the conflict is ever going to be over. I
Yeah,
think that I think this is being set up to be the new Ever War.
yeah, we will see. By the next MPP, we'll be able to reevaluate it because mostly because we're going long and I got to get to bed to go to work. So I don't have much time for anything else. So you wanted to mention DeSantis. We can do him briefly, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
So my issue with DeSantis is that I can't tell whose side he's on
Yeah,
because all of the policy actions he's taking are great, but all of the electoral actions he's taking regarding his potential future career are terrible, terrible, terrible for the American right.
yeah. Whether you like it or not, Trump is the fulcrum which the right sits on right now, and not allying yourself with him is hurting the future of the Republican Party.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I don't even think it's necessarily just in terms of pragmatism. Like in terms of pragmatism, I think that that's also true to an extent. But I think that people don't really think in terms of pragmatism; they think in terms of narrative. That's why the left has gotten so powerful because narrative works better with people's minds, generally speaking. And I was surprised to see that there are people that agree with me on this, but Sargon agrees with me on this that it is more important that Trump become the next president because the story arc has to complete in order for things to make sense. That story arc needs to be closed off. It all needs to come to the natural conclusion. The deposed king needs to triumphantly return. That's the way these things are supposed to work. And DeSantis's presence in the current conversation, as far as 2024 is concerned, is a wrench thrown in the works to ensure that that story arc can't complete properly. Because that, more than anything, will completely destroy the American rights momentum.
Yeah,
If you are of the school of thought that says that the American right in its current form is something that needs to be refined, preserved, and then brought forward into the future, then you can't afford to let DeSantis screw this up.
yeah,
Because the story, in order for them to be a legitimate political force, the story arc needs to complete. Trump needs to return. He needs to get the the second term to which he is basically entitled, and we don't need internecine competition between DeSantis and Trump. And the reason why this seems so strange to me is that there's not any reason for DeSantis to compromise the future of the Republican Party by sticking his oar in with 2024 when he basically has 2028 in the bag
yeah.
if Trump is elected
So
in 2020.
it's very strange with DeSantis because until very recently, most of the rumor mill, now I know it's the rumor mill, but the rumor mill that was going around conservative circles was saying that DeSantis was not going to run against Trump because it would get too drag out and dirty in the primaries, which is my big fear. If we could wind up spoiling both candidates, even if DeSantis is on the up and up and does everything great,
I don't think we could. I think it definitely would be the case.
yeah,
Having that competition take place is enough to defang the enthusiasm behind the Republican Party coming to power in 2024. Like, they can't afford that. They need to have a united front, and the primaries need to be trivial. Like, anybody who goes up against Trump needs to look like the enemy in order to make sure that the entire Republican base stays in line behind one candidate. Because it seems like all of the boomercons want to dump on Trump.
yeah, they always have. They've always had a pinch your nose vote for Trump for whatever reason. They're warmed up more to him now, but their old habits die hard, and they see DeSantis and they give me the argument. Oh well, he's just so much more presentable as a politician. We don't want presentable. Presentable's how we got here. Presentable is how we got uniparty
Presentable is what they
stooges.
told you. Presentable is what they told you about Mitt Romney.
Yeah,
And you believed them then, and what did that get you? It got you the most destructive president up until Joe Biden.
the only way we have a shot at making out of this is if we shake this system up as much as we possibly can, that hopefully we dislodge enough broken parts that we have a chance to replace them and fix it. If we don't have things that are big and loud and angry like Trump is, we don't have a shot. If we go in with a calm natured, calm mannered person who doesn't really do anything, like I suspect DeSantis could very likely be, even if all his policies are great, if they don't do anything to make the current establishment angry enough to make mistakes or to outright dismantle them, it's not going to matter. We have to get rid of the problem that's here first. And DeSantis ain't the tool to do that with. I mean,
Yeah, it's just I don't understand the logic, and now we hear that Jeb Bush is campaigning for DeSantis, which is I can't imagine a bigger red flag for anybody who actually wanted Republicans to win.
yeah. The dream ticket is in the future that is looking less and less likely every day is Trump at the top of the ticket, DeSantis at the bottom of the ticket. Trump runs foreign affairs, and and dismantles the federal agencies, and DeSantis handles the domestic affairs. That would be the dream for the executive branch to be as functional as an America First Republican could possibly want.
The more importantly, that sets you up for the future. That gives you a future at all.
Yeah,
The situation where DeSantis runs against Trump probably means Trump wins in the primaries, but the momentum behind the Republican Party disintegrates and Trump loses to whatever patsy the Democrats put up because they're divided.
yeah, it will. I don't have a crystal ball, but these seem like the most likely futures to me too. Like it's just it, I'm always hesitant to say this is going to happen, and it's fairly easy to see because we've been surprised too much in U.S. politics recently, just because of how broken the system actually is. The more and more it gets revealed, but there is the dream, and I think it's important to keep that potential alive as long as possible. And I hope DeSantis doesn't ruin it by running. It it is it is very possible he's getting some bad advice, and he's still a decent person, and it can make things work. Um, it is very. It would be very disheartening if he is full pro uniparty and will fall right into that trap as soon as he gets elected to a higher office.
It
Uh,
doesn't necessarily need for him to be pro uni party now, but if he just unabashedly decides to take Jeb Bush's support, that puts him in the clutches of the uni party, and you can't get out once you're in there.
yeah, once you indebt yourselves to them, they will hold it over to you and use it to corrupt you little by little. The Unity
Yeah, this
Party
is a
is a
this is a
monster.
selling your soul to the devil thing.
Yeah, they will ask for a little bit more. They will say, "Well, you did this. That's not very fair." They'll pressure you. They'll get under your skin. They are an actual monster that operates like a legit demon. Most of DC is like this. DC itself is a swamp where power aggregates and people fight to try and exert more control over people. I could not imagine a more damaging environment for the soul of a human being. You need some real testicular fortitude to endure that. MTG is the only one that's been holding out so far, and she's still on her first term. She's got
Well,
time.
the reason why she's holding out is because they ostracized her immediately. They basically made it evident that she was not allowed to be a part of their structure.
Yeah,
That she was a pariah.
yeah. It is just that environment. You will acclimate to the environment you move to and operate in. You're a human. That's how humans operate. That's how we do. We just are. We're not perfect. And if the environment is a corrupt hellhole where everybody is trying to be evil and don't know they're being evil, but see themselves as, knowing better than everybody else, and their sense of supremacy is so absolute in their head that this is just the way things should be, you're going to eventually fall into that same trap because they're the only people you got to hang around with. Most of the people in DC are like that. You have to go hunting to find somebody that's not like that. Like, what you gonna do? Wait outside the Capitol building for Matt Gaetz or MTG to show up and go have dinner with them? They're about the only people I could think of. You cannot get in bed with this party. If a candidate wants my unabashed support like I give to Trump, they have to have the uniparty against them because it puts an insulator between the corruption that is inherent in DC and will be pressured on them the whole time they're there and their actual character as it stands going in. It has to chew through that first. So yeah, that's where I stand on DeSantis. It's all hopes and dreams for the best, and expecting the worst, and do our best to push us in the direction of the good ending as much as possible. So, you got anything else for a wrap us up?
I don't think so. There's not really much to say about the way New Zealand has developed over the same period. Um, the reign of Jacinda the Great is starting to disintegrate. Um, we too have a uni party of sorts, but it's less consciously in cahoots with itself. Like our two leading parties still see each other as opponents. They actually appear to be dumb enough not to realize that they're basically identical in all the ways that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But Labour is absolutely wilting in the polls. But the only thing, and it's becoming very obvious now to everybody who looks, that the only thing that propped Jacinda up in the last election was the Coof crisis, the alleged crisis, and that without that, she basically has nothing. When she's been forced to dial back all of her really oppressive mandates, and that, like, it's not like she's given up any power, but the actual the actual mandates have all been dialed back as it became increasingly obvious that nothing had been accomplished by it. That everybody who didn't get sick early because they were locked in their houses and didn't catch a cold that year have now all caught a cold, and most people have had it, like, had the whatever bug is going around at the moment, as many times as they normally would to catch up to the season they missed. So it's all been a ridiculous farce, and people, even if people don't really understand that that's what has happened, they feel it in their gut that this woman was useless and didn't do anything to help, and that she talked down on them the entire time, all the while accomplishing nothing. So all of the mandates have been rolled back for masks and so forth. The traffic light system had disintegrated long before she actually dialed it back. The traffic light system was what they used to determine, what places that we had to use social distancing or wear masks or whatever. People very, very thoroughly had enough of it long before it was shut down and just stopped obeying it. My city was actually relatively compliant with it. Um, I was often the only one in any given store refusing to wear a mask, but you can actually influence people,
Yeah.
because I at work I was the only one who didn't wear a mask at first, and people just sort of quietly stopped wearing it after they saw that it didn't matter, that I wasn't wearing one, I wasn't like dropping dead or whatever. And so even though the rules were never relaxed officially, eventually nobody at my workplace was wearing a mask anymore,
Yeah.
because I refused to wear one, and eventually people started to follow my example because I didn't, fall over dead as a result. But there's still a lot of people who are compliant. Like, I would go to the supermarket and I would observe that there was, like, close to 90% compliance at the time that I was still not wearing anything, any mask. Um, but over time, that started to wear away, particularly as people saw other people who weren't wearing it. And the sort of, like, when you spot one of these people, there's sort of like something wordlessly passes between you, that you are
Oh,
both people who
I had
don't
so
don't
many moments like
comply,
that. So many moments in the supermarket.
because
Oh,
everybody around you is wearing one,
that,
and there's usually just a couple of people who aren't.
yeah. When we were at peak masking, I would walk by another guy, and it was always a guy. He was always usually my height, always had his shoulders back, and walked like he was confident in his stride. And I was doing my best to do the same, and we would walk by each other, and a whole conversation would happen in the span of a half second when our eyes meet. Like, and it usually went something like, "Look at all these cucks." I won't
Yeah,
continue the rest of the conversation because it's not safe for air.
there's still people wearing masks. Mostly though, most of the people that you see wearing masks these days are people who work in food preparation, like at fast food places and that. Either because they are part of a chain where upper management has mandated it, or because they're a small independent place that operates out of a part of a city full of hypochondriacs, and so they don't want to lose custom because everybody's really tight for cash right now. So they're wearing it to keep their customers. But
Yeah.
that sort of behavior is on the slow decline. Like, once it really started to dig in, I noticed it, like, even long after all of the things are dialed back, like probably, if I say 6 weeks ago, 6 or 7 weeks ago, there was still like 20% mask compliance, but like 1 week ago, we're looking at about 2% mask compliance now amongst like common people just walking around. But I still see people wearing them, and it really confuses me. But the people that I normally see wearing them are wearing them in absurd places, like walking down the street or alone in their car. So they're obviously the mask faithful who can't let go of the practice.
Yeah, they've just become totally brainwashed and are now devotees of this new religion.
Yeah. virtually everybody I've talked to has told me that, because like I'm the only person I know who just amongst who isn't part of my family who didn't get the vaccine, and now basically everybody I've talked to has said, yeah, I got 1/2/whatever shots, and then I refused to get any more because I started to feel ill, or because my family member got a reaction to it, or whatever, or I know somebody who ended up in hospital as a result. They all have a story.
Yep.
Everybody has a story
Um,
about somebody they knew or some experience they had which turned them off the vaccine.
exact same story.
So
Not
all of that,
not that we're
all of
saying
that.
anything about the efficacy of vaccines, Susan.
Oh, well, I didn't say anything about that. I'm just saying what people told me. But basically, the Great Reign of Jacinda was founded on the coup. The coup. That was that was all she had. That was everything to her, and it's fallen apart now. So now her poll numbers, and normally most of the media edifices favour Labour quite strongly, but the poll numbers for her are absolutely in the toilet. Like, if the election was held tomorrow, um, even if she had the Greens 100% on side, she would still be looking at only about 48% at best. At best. Which leaves us with Luxon, unfortunately. Christopher Luxon, the leader of the opposition, is. He's basically. I'm trying to think who I can liken him to. I guess he's sort of a Chris Christie. Like, he can sometimes. I'm not saying he's the size of Chris Christie. No, he looks like Lex Luthor instead. But the he can talk the talk sometimes, and he can sound good on the occasional issue, but when it comes right down to the actual practice, everything that he does is purely orthodox machine politics.
Yeah, the kind of
And
conservatism that doesn't conserve anything.
yeah, like he's just going to he's the sort of right winger, in American terms he would be the Republican who doesn't acknowledge the existence of a culture war and thinks everything is actually about the economy and taxes.
Yeah, the spreadsheet Republicans.
Yeah, he's one of those. He's one of those. He's a businessman. Like, that was what he did. But he was a businessman. Worst of all, he's a businessman who has previously been in charge of running state-owned enterprises in the past.
Yeah,
So, which is not something that you really have. But and not only that, but transport. So, so yeah, basically the worst kind of businessman as far as competence is concerned when it comes to transition to government. But he's on the current trajectory. All things all things being equal, he's going to be the next prime minister if nothing changes, which is unlikely. But if nothing changes, he's positioned for that in coalition with ACT, who ACT have postured as a right wing party, but they are Lolbertarian right, sort of, except that they are Lolbertarian, save for in every respect they backed all of the COVID tyranny. So the worst kind of conceivable Lolbertarians.
uh,
They're
yeah.
Lolbertarians in everything that they say, and they immediately cave under any kind of pressure.
Unless they get any money or get scared. That type.
They're one of a handful of smaller parties in New Zealand that people flock to every time the closest large party offends them in some way. So they tend to cannibalize votes directly from the National Party, which is our quote centre right unquote party that Luxon leads. So the number of votes of National plus ACT is usually the same at pretty much all times, plus or minus a little bit. Like, if you want to know how the National Party is doing, you basically look at National and ACT and you combine them, because they're always going to form a coalition if they have a chance to lead the government. Um, when ACT goes up, National goes down by the same amount, and when National goes up, ACT goes down by the same amount. They're basically two wings of the same party, the Lolbertarian wing and the centrist wing.
Yeah.
Labour is similar to that with the Greens. When Labour is being too Labour, the Greens will get a boost, and when the Greens are being too greeny, Labour will get a boost. They have an additional complicating factor though that Labour's the one that indulges most in racial politics, so they have an additional interchange with the Maori Party and the Mana Party, which are both racial nationalist parties, because you're allowed to be racist in this country officially. Um, the other minor parties basically don't really have a look in, although the another party that people flock to when they're being offended is the sort of like they're sort of semi-socialist populist sort of like they're the type of socialism that populists have, which is where they want the government to do things until the government gets out of the way, but they want to use government power to get the government out of the way, which is a bit of a dubious prospect at best of times.
It's a nice fantasy.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a limited imagination like the New Zealand voter, I mean, what else can you do? That's about the best you can hope for. You don't have checks and balances, so you have to hope the government can regulate itself. So that's the New Zealand First Party, run by Winston Peters. They are currently not meeting threshold, so they won't be in the next parliament if the election was held tomorrow. However, their numbers tend to swell towards an election time because they tend to pick up disaffected people from both sides who are just sick of the uni party machine. Except that they tend to make a lot of noise like they're not part of the uni party, and then once they get in power, they act exactly like they are. So we have Winston Peters to thank for Jacinda's ascendancy to begin with. He was the kingmaker who brought that about. But New Zealand First voters have short memories, and they usually forget that. The other minor parties are the Top Party. I don't know what Top stands for, if it stands for anything, but it's sort of run by a kind of odd fellow he would be regarded as a conspiracy theorist candidate by the press, I would say. He has very bizarre and incoherent politics, which are by turns communist, by turns libertarian, by turns whatever he happens to be thinking at the time. He's kind of weird. People usually vote for him as a protest vote. The guy who runs the Top Party, I can't remember his name. He's usually a protest vote. Because we have protest votes in this country, which is where you vote for a minor party that doesn't have a chance of making threshold, so that you voted, even though you know that just because you don't want to vote for one of the major parties that actually has a chance. New Conservative is not making threshold either. They're the one that I'm most closely tied to. I follow their people, generally speaking, and I voted for them in the past. I've been thinking of joining the list as a member, just because basically to signal that there are still people who vote to the right in this country, not because I think they can actually get in, but they are the only pro-life party in the country, and they aren't making threshold, so I don't really feel like I've got much of a choice but to go that way. So yeah, things are a bit of a disaster here, but seeing Jacinda lose will be sweet for at least a season. Like, I hope that she does have a dismal and ignominious defeat. She probably doesn't think much of that. She probably doesn't care. She's been a bit Pollyanna about her chances up until recently, but several successive polls showing her numbers in the toilet are probably wearing away at her confidence. But she probably thinks that she can just hop to a job in the WEF or the UN as soon as she gets booted out of the prime ministership.
Yeah.
But she's not a golden girl anymore because Kufa's over. So I don't think that the UN or the WEF have a use for her now.
Yep.
So she probably doesn't have as rosy a future as she thinks she does. She's just an unpleasant scold that not many people like. Other things electorally in New Zealand are that the left of centre suffered an absolutely brutal, crushing defeat in local body politics. I didn't vote because I couldn't figure out how to enroll, or where I was enrolled for, or whatever, because local body politics are very poorly publicised and difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do, or even how you're supposed to cast a vote. But nevertheless, the left suffered an absolutely crushing defeat, and every single local council swung to right-dominated, if we are going to consider those who have ties to the National Party right-leaning. either independent or right-leaning people on every city council, on every mayorship, every local body, government, every single one swung to the right except for Wellington and Lower Hutt. Lower Hutt is immediately north of Wellington, I believe. It's adjacent to Wellington anyway. Wellington is the capital. So it's basically DC and Virginia stayed blue and the entire rest of the country turned red. That's basically what we're looking at here as far as local politics is concerned.
The
But but yeah, there's local body politics, which means only the politically engaged actually vote in it, if they can work out how to vote, unlike me who couldn't. So it's not a representative of what the country will do as a whole, but it does mean that the general temperature across a lot of the districts in this country is very, very negative towards the current way of doing things. Not necessarily going to play out that way when the national elections happen and whenever the heck they're going to happen next year, I think. But it is somewhat promising that they got an absolute drubbing in almost everywhere in the country, except for 2 districts. So yeah, that's interesting at least. My home province of Taranaki probably is going to swing very, very heavily toward the right as well because they got treated very, very poorly by the powers that be during the Coof episode because they had really, really disproportionately low vaccination rates in my home province in Taranaki. Very few people wanted to get it. The country was furiously trying to brag about their vaccination rates, and Taranaki dragged the average way down because they had a really low rate, comparatively speaking. And they got treated very, very poorly in the press by it, and the people there attributed that as being Jacinda's fault. That Jacinda was the one blackening the name of our province, all because she wants people to get an injection. And so I expect that province is going to go hard to the right come the next election, because unlike other types of people, farmers have long memories. So yeah,
All right. So, yeah, we'll see. Uh, cannot think of anything else we need to go over, and I've got to get to bed because I still do have
yeah,
to work tomorrow.
yeah. You gotta go do them taxes.
Oh, I gotta go
Go
see
make
what the CPA says about the taxes, and then,
go make fun with the IRS.
oh goodness, uh, uh, they should be over on the next communication. A little bit more to do, and she said the next correction will probably be a small one, but have to wait till the guy that actually does the looking over gets back to us. All right, folks. This has been Mostly Peaceful, episode 7, 8, whatever number we're on. I'll fix it in post. Uh, yeah, I do not know when the next one will be. Uh, we will try to
Depends on
do,
how big of a blow up there is after the midterms.
yeah, after the midterms when things swing. If enough swing in surprising directions, we may do one. You can probably count on one the next time there's a major election, for sure. And we'll try to do them intermittently if world events get crazy enough, which they almost certainly will.
Yeah, if we
And
can get in on the ground floor of discussing them before it's all over.
yeah, we will attempt to put one out every so often. Doing research for these and working through our thoughts is time consuming. So if we can do it quick enough and get an episode out, we will. We like doing these, but it's a 5 hour project just to record it, and another 5 to 10 hours of prep work for the minimal amount of research we got to do and writing up we got to do. So they take time. So I'll see what we do next time, and we'll see you whenever that one is. Be sure to check out our other podcast, No Excuses, on youtube.com. We might still be on vtw.com. I don't actually know if the site's even still up.
I
Probably
haven't
not.
tried to go there in a while. I don't know who would still be operating it at this point since we don't have licenses to maintain anymore.
Yeah, probably not worth even checking. You can
Oh, it's
find,
still there, but nothing has been posted on it since December 2020.
yeah, so not even worth going there to check. Just check us on YouTube. We have a Discord.
It looks like they've taken us off anyway.
That's fine. That's fine. We diverged from many of them quite a while ago.
Yeah, they have. It's Show X is the only show that is acknowledged as being part of VTW anymore. So
Yep.
we've been booted off.
Well, everybody's been booted off or quit.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll still keep it in the email address just to give people a poke in the eye.
Yep. So we have a Discord server. I will attempt to remember to put a link to it if you want to come post in the politics board. You can dump memes with us and laugh at our dumb knee-jerk reaction takes on stuff, and play video games with us if that's your thing. We play MMOs and we talk about the ones we play a lot on our other podcast. And yeah, you can check us out there. We will see you guys next time. Sayonara. Bye bye.